My name is Raymond Lawrence. I am the Academic Director for the Center of Teaching and Learning at UBC Okanagan campus. I'm also a professor of computer science who spends a fair bit of time doing research related to databases and most recently related to AI and educational systems. So thank you so much for joining, and hopefully you get something out of this session. Before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that UBC Okanagan, where I am located, is on the traditional ancestral lands of the Syilx Okanagan Nation. And many of you are joining us from UBC Vancouver, which is the traditional land of the Musqueam people, or you could be joining near and far, and we respect the traditional lands that we are located on. This session is not a webinar, it's more like an open discussion, and so we can participate in hopefully effective ways together. You're welcome to post things on chat, put up your hand if you want to get a question answered. And also we are going to use the help system that I'm going to demonstrate. This is entirely optional, but as part of this, you can log in with your UBC credentials. Here's the course code in order to do that. I have 3 excellent students standing by that can help with questions. They all are experienced with AI and they've worked on the system. That would be Kevin, Dima, and Adam. So if you see a message from them, they would be there to help answer any questions as we go along. And I will try to respond to chat as well as much as I can. So if you want to follow along and use the help system, I will post the link here. You can try it out as we go, totally optional. But I'm going to talk about that throughout the project on our work on how we help students respond to and use AI effectively. So this is sort of what the Help Me system looks like. I'll talk about that later, but multiple of us are on the queue. You can post your question on the queue. We've created breakout rooms, so if you really do have a technical question that you don't want to do in front of everybody, we'll put you in a breakout room. Otherwise, the TAs or the students will talk to you over chat to help you in any way that you need help. My plans for this is introduction, talk about the learning objectives to get started, evaluating the quality of AI responses. We'll talk about AI tools for students and AI detection in general. Retrieval augmented generation and databases in AI. I won't keep this very technical if you're new to AI, but I will try to give you some terminology that you can use. I'll talk specifically about our course-specific chatbots that we're working on and we would love to get community feedback from, and then open for QA and discussions. But once again, at any time, post on chat, put your hand up, engage with the online system. Just to have a check here, can we have people just say hi to the community on chat to make sure you're following along and that you can hear me? Thank you very much, Christina, for being first. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's talk about some learning objectives here. What I hope for you to get out of this is to understand the limits of AI and the importance of validating AI responses. We're going to actually try this out. So if you've never used AI before, don't worry. It's pretty easy to do. And if you're a very experienced user, I still think you're going to get something out of this exercise and some of the other discussions that we've had. We're going to review common student usage of AI and issues in detection. If you participated in the student panel, that might have been eye-opening on how they're using it. And I'm actually going to demonstrate very quickly a couple tools as well. That might be some thought-provoking for you. I'm going to show the difference between databases and AI and explain how that relates to some of the terms you've been seeing or hearing about, like accuracy, hallucination, bias. And then I'm going to discuss how we can leverage AI to support students with a course-specific chatbot. Before we start, I just want to motivate why I'm explicitly looking at AI to assist me as an educator. I teach multiple courses on campus, but my most important course and most common course is a third-year computer science course on databases. And this sort of shows how this has scaled over the years. Partly this is due to the growth of UBC Okanagan, but also to the growth in computer science. The first few years, a class size of 20. If you have a class size of 20, I am now very jealous of you, because at 20, you get to know all your students really well. You have lots of interactivity. Once you scale up to the 60, the 100 range, now things are important to automate, whether that's communicating with students, assessments. You know most students and interact with many, but not all. And if you're teaching a class size in the several hundred or above range, now it's a lot of administration and performance, and often you don't get to interact with the students as much as you would like to do. So we got to think about how we can leverage AI to be more efficient, but also keep that human in the loop, because we're not teaching computers, we're teaching students. So we want to make sure that we spend time where it's most appropriate, which is interacting and helping with our students. So what I would like to do now in about 10 minutes, where I'm going to give you 5 minutes to try this out. It doesn't matter what AI tool you do, and you actually don't need an account for ChatGPT anymore. And Microsoft Copilot, if you want to use an account, you can. You can just log in with your UBC account. What I want you to do, maybe you've done this before, but I still want you to repeat this exercise. Ask one or more questions from your course or your work if you're not an instructor, and let's see what the AI response will be. And I just basically want you to rate it. Give it a score out of 5. Post your answer on a Jamboard for Google so we all can see it. And then the idea is we'll review each other's work or answers and see, well, what questions can AI answer and what can they not? So here's the link to the Google Jamboard. I've posted it on chat. And what I want you to do, there's no breakout rooms, just try it out on your own and post to the Jamboard the question after you answer it. So I'm going to demo, but I'd like you to try it out yourselves as well. You haven't used ChatGPT 3.5 or 4 before, this is what it looks like. All I'm asking you to do, post a question. I'm going to ask it about my particular course and see what it comes up with. This is actually a pretty hard question, but we'll see if it knows anything about it. This isn't shocking to me because my course is public, but notice that it has clearly mined information that has been public and it knows a fair bit about it. So what I'm asking you to do then is to grab a sticky note and I'd actually say it's pretty good, and then post it on the Jamboard. Can I get some confirmation in chat that people understand the exercise that we're trying to do? Okay, try it out. Ask your question or multiple questions. It's great if you're an instructor that this is a question that would actually be something you would want to give to the students to do, maybe as an assessment. So you could grade it, but it doesn't have to be. If you're not an instructor, it could be a question appropriate to your work or something like that. Give you a few minutes, get your question, see what the answer is, and then post your answer on a clipboard on Jamboard and see how you did. You might have to move it around because I think by default, it puts it right over top of where the other ones were. But you should be able to move it around and see what you think. The goal here is while you're asking the questions and evaluating the answers is, well, how good? What are the limits of AI for your particular field or what you're trying to achieve? Again, people can edit their questions around, and you can see I'm sharing the screen, but you can see what other people are doing as well on the questions they're asking. So if you've finished doing your question, by all means, you can do another one just for your own. You don't have to post them all, but also take a look what you're seeing on the Jamboard right now and see if you can see any trends or things that AI is pretty good at, regardless which one you used, and which ones it's not very good at. And so while you're doing that, if you have any thoughts about that, in a minute or two, I'm going to ask you to post on chat, well, what questions do you think it was good at? And what questions did you think it wasn't very good at? So minute or two, think about that, and then I'll ask you to post that on chat. Yeah, you can rate the responses of your question. So some people are doing the color-coded thing too. If it was good, 4 or 5, give it a green. If it was decent, okay, you can give it a yellow. And the questions are really bad, people followed along and made it pink or something like that. Helps to visually make it stand out. So you're basically rating how good you think the answer was. And this is a key skill set we want our students to do. But this is also an exercise for us to figure out what the limits of AI are. Okay, take a look at the page now that you've seen it and post in chat what you think, just insights you have, what questions it's good at or what questions it's bad at, and we'll read it. So as a community, what do you think it's good for? Post in chat. What do you think it's not so good for? What you can see. Try it out. I should see some posts in chat. It's bad at drawing things, Irene said. That is totally true. The quality of the prompt is key. Prompt engineering, you've probably heard that term. That is absolutely a key factor. Cameron posted it's better at answering questions about general broad topics. That makes sense because that's what it's been trained on. Sometimes it can answer specific questions well. It really depends if it had a source for that. So for my own course, because that material is public, that answer that it actually came back with is pretty darn good. And it actually even referenced the public link that I have for the course. Depending on how available your course was and how it could have potentially have consumed that content, it may not have been able to respond back as well for that question. Any other insights people have to share on chat on what works and what doesn't? Irene posted it's bad at providing sources. It is. That's definitely something they're aware of. And this actually felt fairly new to me that they were able to pull links directly as part of it, which I actually think that is a valid reference. It's not just a made-up reference that's there. Bad at providing info that's not public. Surface level comparison, Javita posted. So there's quite a bit of variation on what it can answer and what it can't answer. Did anybody post a question like this? Well, obviously you would fill in my course with whatever you want, but something that would be very specific. That's something that it's generally not going to be good for, although this is shockingly good at this point because that is actually the dates for the midterm, but generally it's not. And it also depends what version you have. So I'm in version 4, which is a paid version. Version 3.5, you might not get quite as good answers out of it. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for participating in that exercise. We're going to come back to why it answers questions in a certain way, which ones it's good at and which ones it isn't good at, because that has an impact on both assessment and how students will ask questions of the systems. Okay. Now, if it wasn't apparent to you from what you've seen previously, or maybe you participated in the student panel that was just happening, I'm just going to tell you straight up, there's so many research studies across universities all across the globe that show students are actively using AI tools. And it doesn't matter if the university says they can or can't. Doesn't matter if the instructor or course says it's allowed or not. They are using them, they are out there, and there's so many tools it's hard to keep track of which ones are the most common, which ones are the most useful right now. So for generative AI, you might have used ChatGPT. Version 3.5 is free. You don't even need an account to use it anymore. Version 4 is $20 a month. If you think how much money and effort students are spending at courses at UBC, $20 a month, even on a student budget, is fairly reasonable for them to do. Thank you for the correction on the Google Bard Gemini. There's also other ones like Claude. I'm going to very quickly show Pop AI Pro, which a student just showed me, which was interesting when it did. Generating images, DALL-E, which is integrated into Microsoft and is part of ChatGPT as well. Grammarly for writing, $15 a month. I'll also show you Quillbot. And there's many tools for us as instructors as well to generate content, course plans. I'm not going to talk about that, but there are lots of tools for us in addition to tools for the students. I just want to talk very briefly on how it changes assessment. The fear with AI is now it allows students, like any technology, to outperform their abilities on assessments. But I'm going to argue that's not really new. So the bottom level has been for multiple years, any facts, understand and remember, Internet and Google had that covered. If you didn't know what it was, you could just look it up. There's been also a variety of tools and systems out there like web forums, Chegg, Wolfram Alpha, that for specific use cases can solve problems really well, or basically a repository of problems for students to use. Chegg is probably a very bad word in terms of instructors. I don't know if you know, as a public company, they just reported earnings last week and they didn't do very well. Why? Because all the OpenAI tools not only can do those levels of Bloom's taxonomy, they also can do create and evaluate that we thought would be resilient to AI use or AI ability to perform those assessments. I would say, though, as instructors, what's more interesting than is your assessment resilient to AI is the question is, should they be doing the assessment at all? What should the learning outcomes be? Should they change based on what the technology could do? The bottom two levels of Bloom's taxonomy in terms of understand and remember, this fact recall has long been replaced by internet searches or other technology. So the question is, in our courses, should we be asking students to remember all these facts? Does it make sense to do that? There's also been digital assistants and tools that can help with analyze and apply sort of problems. And what generative AI now allows people to do is generate new material and insights. And the question is, how does that change what the student needs for the job? Maybe they don't need to be doing whatever learning outcome that we're doing before. And maybe that's why they're pushing back against some of the assessments that are doing and just outsourcing them to AI, because they're thinking, well, I don't need to do this anyways if AI can do it. So part of the motivation to have is, how do we convince students that these learning objectives are what's really important for them to do? Because then they're more likely to be able to do your assessments and not outsource it to AI or other technology or other people. Have you, as an instructor, if you're an instructor, taken your assessments and put them into AI and see how it did? This is information from OpenAI. Version 3.5 is shown in blue bars. In green is performance of GPT-4. What you can see on standardized exams, ChatGPT and other similar Gen AI tools do exceptionally well. So the likelihood of your particular assessment being resilient or resistant to AI, depending what it is challenging. And the one, for instance, this performance on the uniform bar exam that GPT-4 could basically pass the test to become a lawyer, got a lot of publicity, but we can see across the board, there are very high performance on what GPT can do. So I don't know if you've tried that, but as an instructor, I really encourage you to do that, to take your assessments, put them in whatever AI tool you want, see how they do on them. So I did that. Third year database course. This was the performance on the assignments that I offer just last year. And I knew about this before I actually gave the assignments. You can see that even in a third year course, relatively complicated, some of them take hours to do, that the AI is scoring exceptionally well. Where is it not doing quite so well? On things that are diagrams, and these particular assessments were very specific. They were both diagrams and they were designed for different educational outcomes. We actually built a system specifically for these particular applications. So we saw when people were posting, what is AI not good at? It can draw some amazing pictures, but if you ask it to do specific things on diagrams, often that becomes a challenge. So it's just something to be aware of. Then the question is, if AI is so good, how can we detect it? I'll tell you right now, there's mixed results for computer and human detection of AI-generated content. Companies will gladly say they've got really accurate detectors on AI. The question is, how was that validated? How were they providing those statistics for you? I find it instructive that OpenAI, one of the leaders in AI, had a detector and they basically turned it off. in July 2023, saying it has a low rate of accuracy. So if one of the leaders in AI has a challenge of detecting its own AI-generated content, that should tell you something about the problem here. I think it's important because many people are familiar with similarity detection, such as Turnitin, which does have an AI detection capability. Detecting AI is fundamentally different than similarity detection. Similarity detection means you see two texts that look the same, and you can actually tell they're the same because you can compare them letter by letter. And that also allows you to figure out the provenance or where that text came from. That's well-established technology that works well. The problem with AI detection is it doesn't work with that same idea. The way AI detection algorithms generally work is they look at patterns or statistics as part of how the text is generated that are kind of like a fingerprint saying, hey, this sort of looks like AI. But notice it's not as clear-cut as a similarity detection where you can compare the text directly on what's going on. So I'm going to argue AI detection is harder because these characteristics are not universal between AI systems, prompts, and users. And let's just take a look at what that potentially could mean. So I'm going to go back to ChatGPT for a second. And many people, especially who have writing as one of their assessments, will ask students to write an essay or write a reflection or write a summary paragraph and then submit that and then for evaluation. So let's just do an example of what that could look like. So I'm going to ask the AI to generate me a reflection paragraph on the impact of AI on university education. ChatGPT 4, but it doesn't really matter what system you're doing. We'll let it go through the generation here for a second. So it seems to be pulling out some of the discussion that could be there, can tailor educational content, helps with research capabilities, has an impact on educators on what they do. A reasonable paragraph, I'm not going to mark it. But the point here is, let's say the student copied that and pasted. An AI detection or yourself might be able to say, oh, okay, that kind of looks like something that potentially could be AI generated. The challenge is it's very easy to change what that prompt is and make any Gen AI generate something totally different. So no, I've said, yeah, that was a great response, but I'm a first-year student. I don't understand the technology. I'm from an underrepresented group. Write it differently for me. And if you take a look at the text that's coming out here, that's a dramatic shift in the output. Now, maybe an AI detector can still see some of these changes, but you can see why this problem is fundamentally harder than saying this text looks exactly like this text. And then to compound that further, our intelligence students aren't just doing that. What you can do is then go to a tool like Quillbot, which is also free up to a certain limit, paste it in, and then say paraphrase. And then what it'll do with suggestions, it will actually change the text that was generated from the other AI. And I'm not paying for this version, but you can make it write in very different modes as well. So not only did the AI generate it, you could pass it through multiple tools to determine, to just have something different in the writing. And obviously, good students also might modify some of the text as well. So I just want to appreciate how hard this detection problem is and why UBC is not recommending detection software to be used officially at all. Other tools that you're probably familiar with, I could take that same text, paste it into a Google Doc, ask Grammarly now to give me suggestions and make changes to that text as well. So I think what students are actively doing is not even just using one tool and submitting it. They may potentially use multiple tools in order to change what their submissions are. As another example, this is Pop AI. What I've done is I've taken assignment number 3, which was publicly available for my course. It's not even in a PDF, but I just printed it as a PDF. And what you can do in this is upload the PDFs and now ask questions. So this is, once again, one of these course-specific chatbot sort of features that you can do. So this is an assignment. It uploaded it. It was smart enough to pull out all of the questions that were asked for the student to do it. And all I had to do was actually click on the question that I wanted it to answer, and it gave me an answer in 15 seconds. And that answer is actually right, perfectly. And it's very easy to do. And that doesn't surprise me because I've showed you the results before in ChatGPT, just taking the prompt, pasting it in, students were doing exceptionally well. So the message I want to just provide on this particular section here is this is a really hard problem in terms of the detection and how we are going to respond to it. You would think that as a person, you could figure out what is AI or not, and you might be decent. But we tried this. We took some AI assignments and we took some human assignments and we said, how accurate could we be? And the answer is not great. About 70% accuracy with 22% false positive. So we could find some AI, and you could see some people were much better. They were like perfect in detecting AI, but other TAs and instructors were worse than random. Partly that's based on experience, but also it's partly based on the challenge to detecting AI. 22% false positives would not be a system I would want to use. I wouldn't want to falsely accuse 22% of my students that they were cheating on AI. Interestingly, the tells, if you will, that humans use are a little bit different than what the automated detectors use. Generally, the best tell is that the student has submitted something that's overly advanced for what they would know in the course. So for instance, in the computer science world, if a program should be really simple, but they're using concepts that only a third or fourth year student would use, that's obviously a giveaway. And in many domains, you might have sort of a hierarchy in knowledge where it would be obvious that that is the case. But once again, that's not perfect either, because as we saw, we can ask the AI to write or produce the output according to a certain level. So it is an interesting question, and I'm not going to give a perfect answer for this. I actually think this is something we should discuss as a community on what makes sense. But as these tools are getting integrated into products like Word and Google Docs that people use all the time, they actually become almost as seamless as using spelling and grammar support. Do we stop users from doing that? And even if we wanted to, how would we do that? You can think about AI moving in that general direction as simple as doing speller and grammar check as what we're used to in Microsoft Word or Google Docs. So as I said, if you've ever generated AI images, it's not an easy thing to get exactly the message you want. But I thought it would be fun. My summary of this particular part was with two particular images that I asked AI to generate. So this is coming from DALL-E 3. My questions for you, posted in the chat, what do you think my prompt was? I had basically one sentence for each one of these images as a takeaway that I think instructors should think about. What do you think was the prompt for image 1? And what do you think was the prompt for image 2? Take a minute, post in chat. What were the takeaway messages that the AI was trying to illustrate on my behalf? Right up. Wow, Emily, A+ for you. The first prompt was basically, do not hide from AI. It's not going away. The second prompt was actually, it took a lot of prompts to actually get it. It wasn't quite this simple. It was face and embrace AI. The idea is it's there. We have to accept it and actually embrace it as instructors. Students will know whether we are afraid of AI and hiding from it or we are embracing it. And we want to embrace it so students also embrace it in proper ways. So that's the general idea I was trying to show. Thank you, everybody, for participating on chat. Now I'm going to talk a little bit technical. I'm trying to keep this not technical, but just a little bit to show you my mental model on how I understand AI. And I'm not an AI researcher. I come from the database world. So a database, very simple definition, allows for storing and retrieving data efficiently. That's my definition. Then I asked ChatGPT 3.5 to define generative AI, and it gave a really verbose but very accurate definition. The key pieces of this is it's algorithms and models that generate new content based on what it's been trained on, producing new realistic looking content. So it just doesn't give you back what you put in. It builds something new when you ask it a question. And just to illustrate why that's important, a database It's just a repository of information. So if I wanted to keep track of the capitals, capital cities of countries, I would have a table of information. You're probably familiar with an Excel spreadsheet that stores things like, well, the capital of Canada is Ottawa. So if I ask a question to a database, what is the capital of Canada? If it has that information, it just gives it back directly, looks it up, capital of Canada is Ottawa, done. If you have a model of what AI is, and if you're an AI researcher, I apologize for my black box abstraction that I'm going to put on all the complexity of AI. And AI is basically a network of nodes and links together, but massive. So ChatGPT 4 has 175 billion parameters. So what that means is it has 175, you can think about it, once again, I'm generalizing here, billion links between these nodes. That helps it encode the knowledge. So when you train a generative AI, you're giving it information, and then that is helping encode those parameters. So when you ask it a question, it'll give you back the answer you expect. So if you train it on knowledge like the capital of Canada is Ottawa and similar things like that, it will get that information encoding as part of its model. But the important thing to understand is there's no specific place inside this system that's storing a fact like the database. So if you train it on other things that aren't correct, although some people might think Toronto is the capital of Canada, or at least the center of Canada, then it's also taking this information in and storing that. So if you ask it, well, why are you making a mistake when I ask it the capital of Canada? Not that it will in this particular case. A hallucination is just a mistake. The AI came back with a wrong answer. The problem is, how do you pinpoint why it came back with the wrong answer? Unlike a database, which has an exact representation of that answer in it, that answer is a whole bunch of weights and links. And so it's not as clear how you actually fix that without retraining it or giving it more positive examples. This also shows why bias is so hard for the companies to eliminate. Because if they trained it on a diversity of sources that already have bias in it, it's not that they can just reach into their model and pull out the bias pieces, because it doesn't work that way. The biased knowledge is there with all the other knowledge that it was trained on. So this model helps me, basically grounds me in the ideas, well, what do I think AI is possible and what are the limits are? The last technical slide I want to talk about, in order to answer questions that the AI hasn't been trained on, or questions that it doesn't answer well, or very course specific, the technology used is called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And the basic idea behind that is, if the AI model wasn't trained on this knowledge, but we have this knowledge that would be valuable to it, before we ask the question to the AI, to ChatGPT, we search our database of knowledge, which we control what's in it, and then we take that information and we provide it with the question to the LLM to do the answer. Now, this little piece, taking whatever the question is, looking it up in the database, formulating that to a proper prompt, is actually where the magic happens. Now, there's prompt engineering and a lot of work done. This is not a solved problem on what that looks like. But fundamentally, that's how these AI systems are going to get better. Well, first of all, they're going to train on more data and be more effective on that training process, but they're also going to augment it with external data that they weren't trained on. And why that's important for us as potential instructors who want a course-specific chatbot, we need some way of providing this information to the AI in order for it to answer questions that it couldn't before. So before I talk about what that could look like for student support, I just want to do a little bit of background on, well, what does student support look like? It's interesting that office hours and our students-instructor interactions are so important. We know that they increase retention, students are happier, positive impact on student outcomes. The challenge is, as our courses grow, our opportunities to have those interactions with students are decreasing. And prior research has showed that office hours and these instructor-student interactions are not equal. They're unequally accessed, and often students use them as the last resort. They don't want to come to you or to contact you unless they really need to. They prefer any other way. to be honest, whether that's a web search, AI answers, or email. And the question I'm kind of getting you to think about here is, in your courses, how many emails do you receive? And is that the way you actually want to be engaging with your students? So what do your office hours look like? Once again, 2 AI-generated images on what office hours could potentially look like. Could look like the image on the left, where your office hours are lined up out the door, whether that's a physical or virtual door that they're at. Or it could be on the right, where you are there and nobody is there. You have no interaction with students. And I would argue both are not ideal. Students don't want to line up, and you don't want to be exhausted with long lines. And if nobody's coming, we're losing opportunities for the interaction with students. So the goal that I'm trying to do with my research group, in conjunction with some people at CTL and CTLT, is look at, well, what would it be like to develop a UBC-approved chatbot giving answers to students? That could give the ability to basically analyze how students are interacting with generative AI. There are multiple products out there, just to be clear. If you pay for GPT-4, you can create your own custom GPTs. The only drawback to that as an instructor, to use that, students would also have to be paying for a license, and that's probably not what you want to do. Another system I'll mention, if you want to explore it, is Poe, that also allows this concept of creating your own specific chatbots to your content that's there. So what we did is we took this help system that we built during COVID, basically, to support online office hours, virtual labs, and queues, and added AI features to it. And what we want to do is basically do some evaluation with instructors and others and say, does this make sense? It could be the fact that students still will just go to outside tools. Just like, for instance, on Canvas, at least in my course, students don't use the discussion board. They would rather go anywhere else besides a UBC tool, do Discord or something else. But it is an interesting question what UBC level support should be. And generally as instructors, what we would want if we were going to build this. So what we added in addition to the queue is we could post asynchronous questions and have the AI generate answers, and also have a chatbot that's specific to the course. So the reason we're working to build this is, one, we're researchers. We want to figure out what's possible, but also there's some tangible benefits to that. We can customize software to our specific needs. We're not locked into a vendor. Right now, because it's a competition for audience, these tools are reasonable in costs, but we're not always guaranteed that is the case. And even so, at UBC scale, they become quite expensive if we do them. So we tested the help system without the chatbot before, with virtual office hours, basically saying, does that reduce or change how students interact with the system? And what we found is when students come to office hours, whether it's virtual or in person, generally those questions are related to assessments that you do. When they email you something, it's totally different questions. They're normally emailing you related to administration for your course, whether that's deadlines, illness, regrading, things like that. Some of those questions might be answerable by chatbots, but others won't. We also just surveyed how students interact with office hours in general, and you might have experienced this in your own course. There's power users who are a significant amount of the time, and there's other students who don't show up at all. In this case, over half of the students didn't interact with the instructor or TAs in any way in some form of office hours or virtual lab. But we can change behavior by making tools that make it easier for students. So this did change the number of emails, or at least the students' desire to email the instructor versus showing up to a help session. And the question then is, could we potentially use chatbots to do that even further? And will students be accepting of that, or still will they want to remain doing emails? So what we did is we took that chatbot, we took the system, we added the ability to upload documents like you see in other tools. And now when you post questions about it, it can come back with references specific to your course material. So this is showing references specific to my course material. And then we also basically took the similar thing as you have a discussion board where you can post a question, and the AI will answer it first. And then if the AI answer isn't good, the instructor can come in and say, no, this is actually the answer to the question, and then click it verified. And so when the student now looks at that answer, they can see that that answer has been answered by a human, not AI. My general feeling is that AI is going to be good and it's going to continually improve, but we want to be still in the loop as instructors because we're not teaching computers, we're teaching people. We want to make sure we have that opportunity to interact with people. So this is what this office hours looks like live. So I could post a question like, when is a midterm exam or something like that. It may or may not be able to answer that question. In this case, it can answer that question and it can provide references that the student could link out to. But there could be questions it couldn't answer. And I don't know if I have one for here. See how good it would be that. So that one is not right. So as an instructor, then what I can do is I can go in and basically see all the questions that have been asked by the system, and then I can decide to modify a question and say it's valid. So let's just do the midterm one. This one was correct. I can mark it as valid, save those changes, and then if a student come back and ask that question, it actually shows differently on the chatbot that was there. So the student actually has some understanding that, no, this just wasn't AI generated. This was human generated. And they could do very similar things with posting in a discussion forum. So the goal here is to see if we can build systems and support that we could use more broadly. And so the students aren't always going to these external tools. So my summary here is the goal is to treat AI as, I would say, a co-instructor, not to be afraid from it. So what you can do is not just generate content with AI and assessments, but maybe what you also can do is have it help you answer some of these student questions in an effective way. Because I would say it's not effective to be answering emails all the time as our primary way of communicating with students. So that's my presented part of the session, but I'm happy to hear questions that people have. You can put up your hand or post in chat. Any thoughts people have on, would this be something they would use in their course? And what do we really want students to be doing in terms of AI and question answering? Thank you, everybody. And I'll take any questions that you have. So Emily asked, what did I end up doing with all the assessments where AI scored 100%? I am not going to be in policing. I think it's a lost cause. So actually what I do, the very first class and for the assignment, I show them that the AI can answer this question live in class before the assessment even happens. And I say, AI can do this. There's no question about it. But if you are going to get a job or you need this skill set to do it, not AI. Otherwise, the employers are just going to do AI. And the point of the assignment is not for the grade. The point for the assignment is for you to do the learning. So I really believe that the only way you truly can be resilient to AI is get students to believe that this is important to them. I think the policing game is not something that you win. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering about feeling of belonging in the classroom and that connection that you have when you go to the office hours and you get to know the instructor more as a human. And I mean, I realize that we have fewer students going there, but is there a way that we can sort of continue to try and get students to come to office hours as well as using an AI to answer questions?
Yeah, so one of the things I did, because the tool allowed us to support virtual office hours efficiently, we basically just a very simple idea. If the student showed us an answer before it was the deadline, I gave them bonus marks. In this case, it was 10% bonus if they showed up 4 days before it was due. And so what I did then is not only did we quickly check it, in our field it's easy because the checking was automated, but then that gave TAs and myself a chance to ask the student, how did you do? Or give them feedback, or just have that conversation. So what happened is we got a lot more people actually attending office hours than normal. I know 50% seems low, but it could be even lower than that. But it also gave us a little bit of AI resilience, because I would actually ask the student, well, how did you do the assignment? Or explain to me what this was. And I think not only that gave me a chance for a conversation, which I think is important, but it also motivated students to make sure that they at least could explain what they did, even if they had AI do some of the assignment.
No, I was just following up saying how I think that is great. I love the way that you leverage that to be able to get that more of a buy-in with the students and engaging with the assignment.
Yeah, I think my general message here as an instructor is you don't want to fight an AI war with students, because you're going to lose. My general message is let's motivate them why this is important for their learning and engage them. So that's actually nothing different than before. It's just AI has lowered the bar for them to outsource the work. If you motivate them to do it, whatever your assessment is, that's the most resilient to AI. And that's where the learning is going to happen. So it really becomes an exercise in motivation, not an exercise in policing. Yeah, so Emily, I think my answer, one thing I'm pushing for in our Faculty of Science and the CTL is a computer testing facility. So one way you get around, if you really want to do things that are verified for accuracy, and you want to make sure that students are in a controlled environment. So that's why, unfortunately, to say paper exams are the most AI resistant possible exam. But if you do anything computer-based, then if you add a known environment, that gives you confidence as well. And it also depends on what you're going for. So at least in my field, the exams are designed to do summative assessment, where the assignments are formative assessment. So if the assignments are not ideally all done by the students, what really is important is by the time they hit the end, that they can prove with their own knowledge that they were able to do whatever that work was. So if you know anybody who wants to explore this, either as a researcher or someone wants to test it in class, we're actively looking for people to work with us to investigate what it would look like to support these chatbots broadly. And so please have them reach out to me, or reach out to me if that's something you're interested in. And seeing no further questions, I'm just going to wrap it up, give you a few more minutes back. Thank you so much for attending, and please attend as many Celebrate Learning Week sessions as you can. Fantastic professional development experience. Hope to see you in some of the other sessions. Have a great day, everyone.